my exciting and impactful guest speakers for you here today, which I will be introducing to you soon. So welcome. As I said, our key focus today is on the telecom and ICT sector, and let's jump right in. So as the global telecoms and ICT sectors transition into 5G, AI, cloud computing, Internet of Things, and edge technologies, our role as human resources is evolving really from a very traditional talent management role to being a strategic enabler of digital transformation. And that's a fairly big shift from the traditional, is really getting into what tech means and how it helps us within our workforce, not only outside, as all the techies around the table here are probably very much more clued up than we are. The panel brings together experts, HR experts, telecom leaders, and workforce futurists to explore how HR can become a driver of innovation, and very much so the culture change that needs to happen. How do we manage skills, agility, and workforce readiness for this hyper-connected future? This session will cover strategies, insights, and real-world practices on how HR is addressing that talent shift and capabilities required for the next gen of networks. How do we create a diverse and inclusive and digital leadership in digital? And reimagining workforce models to stay ahead of the highly dynamic and tech-driven ecosystem. Just to set up some of the objectives of the session is really to understand emerging workforce demands created by 5G and digital transformation in telecoms and ICT, explore HR's role in closing the gaps, especially around AI, cybersecurity, data science, and cloud infrastructure. We very much want to unpack talent acquisition, learning and development, and workforce planning practices, especially with the changes and shifts and how people work, not in your traditional permanent contracting base. It may be very different and look very different. How do we share our strategies for change management? How do we develop our leadership and foster a culture of innovation? And we're going to discuss inclusion and sustainability as a critical success factor. Let me introduce our guest speakers today. But before I kick off, I'm Karen Roux. I'm managing partner here at Regenesis. I look after the South African Office for Corporate Education. I'm also going to do a round robin of our guest speakers for an introduction. And let's kick off with Bradley. Bradley, if you can introduce yourself, but also tell me a little bit, in a short one-liner, what do you think is your key challenge in preparing our workforce in ICT and telecoms? Bradley.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Yeah, so I'm Bradley Young. I head up the retail department here at Opera South Africa. A little bit about me. I've got a history of about 13 years within the telecoms industry, with most of that being based off of L&D. So learning and development has been my primary core function for most of my career, and now just expanding into a larger format role. I think one of the challenges and barriers that we face within our organization is we've got quite a big staff complement, and a lot of that is field force that sits at a store level. Some of these guys have got the matric, some of them have got further studies, but for the most part it's retail employees that are looking to get into a first job or maybe even a second job. And I think because of the fast pace of technology, it's our responsibility to upskill these individuals in our team. And not only does our products as smartphones and IoT products bring rich wealth of AI and technology, we also need to make sure that our team can effectively understand these technologies, not only to be able to sell it, but I think the byproduct is it also helps them in their daily lives as well.
Thank you, Bradley. I think it's going to be very interesting to hear from your sector and very hands-on, as you said, in the store line. I think we've got also the contrast with some of the bigger organizations who are here today. So it'll be interesting to see the interplay between that.
Absolutely.
Tuto, if I can introduce Tuto Malapo. Tuto, you come from Reliance. I've actually done some work with Reliance, an enormous organization, but I'm going to hand over to you to introduce yourselves and maybe in a short sentence also what do you see as some of the challenges?
Thank you, Karen, and it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm actually the Senior Vice President for Global Transformation with Reliance Infosystems. So my role is to support the organization in its growth. Reliance is a leader in global digital transformation, and we operate across 4 continents. But of course, we have a very strong presence in Africa. And part of my role also actually focuses on building future-ready teams and ensuring that our clients are able to unlock the full value of modern technologies, right? So this is talking about cloud, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and of course 5G, which is what we're talking about. So how we are basically preparing ourselves internally, looking at the various challenges that are out there. It's all about, of course, finding the right key focus, including workforce readiness. We are not only a solution integrator, but we do ensure that when it comes to provision of these solutions, it's also solutions we adopt, right? So there are a lot of technologies that we utilize to bridge the gap in terms of the readiness of our workforce, helping them obviously understand that, IT is fast-paced and a lot of changes are always happening every single day, right? So we adopt those tools in alignment with what is happening in the market, allowing us to quickly interact with our employees, helping them to ensure that even from a skilling standpoint, they'll be able to engage with our clients, engage with our partners, develop the right solutions that will meet the needs of the current IT landscape. And yeah, I think it's as simple as I can put it, but I really look forward to engaging with you, Karen, and the rest of the panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tuto. And I think we are also very excited to hear what you can share with us today, because Reliance is such a big organization and stretching worldwide, really. So I'm sure today is going to be a good learning experience for us as well. Welcome.
Absolutely.
If I just want to double check Monique. I don't think she's joined us online, so I'm going to ask Kiona. Kiona, welcome to the session. Head of Talent Acquisition at CCI Global. And we got her counterpart here as well, Paul, which we will introduce now. If I can hand over and ask you to do a quick introduction of yourself and maybe share some of your key priorities in terms of preparing the workforce.
Thanks, Karen. So my name is Kiona Bodasing, and I look after talent acquisition at CCI. And I think if I could put it down to kind of the top 3 challenges we face, one would be, navigating the increased complexity of skills in roles that were once traditionally a lot more transactional. The second would be balancing speed versus quality in, the high pace, high volume BPO environment. And I think the last one would be addressing the skills gap, so the digital divide and skills gap, especially within the youth. So that would be probably my top 3 challenges.
And they are not small challenges, Kiona. So we look forward for you sharing with us what you're thinking and how you see the way forward. I think a lot of organizations are really struggling getting just talent skilled up, capable, but also how do you do it on a continuous basis because things change so quickly.
Absolutely.
So welcome and thank you for joining us. And with no further ado, Paul, if you can introduce yourself, your colleague from CCI.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah,
lovely
that's
to have
right.
the continent with us. We've also got a presence in Kenya, so quite close to our hearts.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so my name is Paul Morgan. I'm the head of training here at CCI Global. As you rightly said, Karen, based in Kenya at the moment, but supporting other geos across our landscape. So, a really interesting question, and to try and put it into a short sentence is obviously quite a challenge. But again, to link in with what Bradley and Kiona was saying, really, coming from the L&D space, the first thing that we've got to look at is what are the current skill sets, and it's not just within the workforce that we've got existing. We've also got to look at the new hire workforce as well, and how do we integrate that. So you can imagine the job sort of doubles already because you've got your new intakes coming through, but you've also got your existing workforce that we need to upskill. So in order to do that, we need to look at a tailored and tiered approach to the change management system, and understanding where people are exactly and tailor making the requirements to their needs. So short and sharp, but a lot to dig into, and really looking forward to the conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Paul, and would love to hear from your side as well, because I think being in the education business, it's not an easy thing to tailor everything to everyone's requirements. It's quite tricky. Thank you. If I can then, Farhad, you are from Cell C, and would love to for you to introduce yourself and maybe also share some of your challenges, please.
Good afternoon, Karen, and to the viewers and to the panel. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Farhad Suleiman. I head up Cell C Business, which is the B2B commercial business within Cell C. I think some of the challenges I'm experiencing in my area relates to, I think what Paul just mentioned is, having institutional or industrial knowledge in terms of the vertical that we're in or the verticals that we serve, and the newer talent that's coming through that is a bit more tech savvy. That's the one part. The second one is managing the transformation journey that most organizations are going through from a digital perspective, whether it's just AI or machine learning, or it could be, process engineering, RPA, and things like that. So it's also managing the cross and upskilling whilst digitally transforming the business. So that's the second one. And I think the third one is just finding the right mix in terms of culture. So, especially with, work from home, which involves quite a bit of tech, but keeping the innovation going and keeping people dialed in and keeping the culture and the human and side of the culture going whilst embracing technology and a work from home environment.
And I really like what you're saying, because it's so hard to keep that human touch whilst everything is so technology driven, and can be quite cold if you don't engage with the human aspect as well. It makes life easier, but it also makes life harder in a way. Welcome, Farhad. Lovely to have you here today, and really very interested to hear what is happening at Cell C. Bulelwa, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, please. Welcome here today. And Bulelwa is from an organization called Lead for Africa. Quite a different perspective. I went to read up a little bit on your organization. Bulelwa, introduce yourself and your organization and share with us some of your challenges, please.
Thanks, Karen. I think there might be an error there. I'm from Network International. But it is going fast. Not a problem. I'm Bulelwa Mzumkolo. I head up talent leadership for Africa. So it's quite complex to see that whenever we're looking at the human aspect, as Farhad said, they really touched my heart, because I'm like, with this digital acceleration, we're finding ourselves in a bit of, where do we go? We've got digital inequality in some of the regions we support. Retention issues are some of the ones that are quite pertinent. As much as you're getting in this great talent, it's the same rate as it's exiting. Change is happening so rapidly, so we're finding that our employees are starting to have fatigue. How do we keep abreast? There's the workforce complexity aspect as well, where you find how do we reshape our cultures, the ways of work, when we're looking at leadership capability, upskilling, reskilling, what was up to date today, tomorrow it's something else. So when you're looking at that human aspect, you really ask yourself, whoa, how can we actually be the safekeeping HR function that is also the network and the bridge between business, generating revenue, but at the same time taking up the human beings on a psychological safety journey and actually helping them in these nuances that some of us don't even know where it will lead us. I think we talked about 5G. I asked myself, shucks, by the time we grapple with 5G, we'll probably be talking about 6G. So how do you upskill, reskill, unlearn, and all of these human capabilities that really also need to stay apart with this digital era that we're in. So it's quite nice to be with the thought leaders to actually unpack some of the nuances and how the human capital aspect of things can be abreast to actually look at the interconnectedness of all these segments that are constantly evolving. So thank you, everyone. Super excited to be here.
If I listen all the comments this morning, and you really touched on it, Bolelo, as well, and it leads me to think that there's quite a heavy onus on leaders, and especially HR leaders, to upskill themselves in order to upskill other people and understand what is the changes that are affecting us through this whole process of quick and speedy and changes and new technology at all times. I don't even want to think about G6. I think we're going to be... Oh, what is next? Right. I would like to kick off, Bradley, and I'm going to put you on the spot with the first question. How are HR leaders in this sector aligning workforce strategies with the rollout of 5G and emerging technologies? So what are you doing? What is your thinking around what should happen in the industry and organization?
Yeah, so I think it's quite funny. We're talking about 5G and emerging technologies, and sort of Oppo's on the precipice of 6G already, and it's just this rapid evolution of technology. And from coming from a smartphone brand, we load our devices with tons of AI technology, and because the rate of improvement on devices, it's not even an annual cycle anymore. It's within a 3 to 6 month cycle. There's significant improvements and changes. So it really keeps us on our toes in how we keep our workforce, skilled and knowledgeable. So we thoroughly have to train our teams and make sure that, and like you said, we have to, as leaders, understand the technology, because when people phone us, we need to have the answers, or at least be able to find the answers. So, from something as simple as deploying an AI school concept within our team, where we don't just, focus on, devices only, but we try to explore and upskill our team holistically on all the technology that is out there, because they also have to now sell against competitors that are also coming to the party with various AI elements and other technologies. So I think one of the things that we've seen through the deployment of very specific training modules and courses within our team and organization, a nice little spin-off is it seems to be enhancing their own lives and skills as well, because they're able to sell the product, but they're also able to utilize these features on the devices that we provide them. And one, it makes them more engaged, it makes them a little bit of a more adaptable workforce. And I think it's quite crucial in this fast-paced industry that we are in. I think as a result of that as well, the high staff turnover is something that many industries face, and something we also face as well. And leading back to one of the challenges that I mentioned earlier of we generally get a lot of younger staff in our team, and the problem I face is we train them up, we get them to be the best in industry, and then they get stolen from other organizations or companies. And you can't get stuck on those setbacks. You just got to usher in the new group and start again. But I think fundamentally, from my perspective, it's one of the things that I take a little bit of pride in. Is like when people are being hunted from my team, it means that clearly we are doing something correct. And years down the line, I get people calling me and say, you guys really helped me as a footing for my career. And it's always a nice, heartwarming warming story, and just makes me motivated to do what I do. I think for us, trying to retain our staff through making them satisfied comes down to how we train, how we educate, and how we grow these individuals.
So I want to throw open to the group. Bradley comes from the more personal interaction with technology clients. Is it similar in the bigger organizations? He spoke about the young people coming in. I'm assuming there's sometimes a generation gap, and the upskilling portion of new staff coming in, but also retaining the old staff. How do we bring them on board with the new technology? What is your approaches? What are your understanding with the bigger organizations who do a more B2B business, for example? Ray, anybody who would like to respond to that question?
Yes, thanks, Karen. I think there's definitely similarities with what Bradley's saying. The generation of the workforce that's coming in. What's quite interesting in that is what I believe that we will find over the coming years is that the workforce is potentially already going to be educated within this field prior to us coming in. But at the moment, because we're in that change, we're almost responsible for giving them everything that they need to be equipped with the AI future. But I do genuinely believe it's going to get easier as time goes on, as we all sort of get used to it. But I think to go back to the question, it does boil down to a lot of workforce planning, not just within the L&D space, but holistically as well, across the global business. Certainly a lot of similarities to what Bradley's saying there from our standpoint.
Thank you, Paul. I also want to throw it open to Nico. Nico, if you can do a quick introduction of yourself as one of the senior talent management specialists at Derivco. If you could do a short introduction and maybe also respond around the gap or the generation gap. Do you perceive it the same in your organization? Nico, open to you.
Hi, Karen. So I'm an organization design and development specialist, and I try to inject some business architecture principles into the world of people and managing work. So also just a correction, I'm not with Derivco. I'm an independent consultant. It's one of my previous organizations that I worked for. I think I want to touch on or latch onto what Paul just mentioned with workforce planning. I think that's quite an important thing. It's one of the things that also seem to be one of the big challenges that I think HR face is at what point do they get involved in the conversation when there's a shift to a new technology, for example, being introduced in an organization. It always seems like it happens a little bit too late. There's so much to do to bring everybody on board and to make sure everybody's equipped with the skills they need to be able to use and participate in the strategic shift. It often seems that HR is involved a little bit too late. So I think that's one of the things that I think would benefit HR tremendously is to make sure that they are speaking to, if it's the enterprise architects that drive the technology decisions in an organization, or whoever's the drivers of technology decisions, to be in on that conversation as early as possible, so that they are able to do the workforce planning that Paul mentioned, that they can understand what the impact is on all the downstream people management practices, yeah, to be able to set up the necessary development initiatives for the workforce, because I think what the point that you're raising is that there's quite a diverse workforce usually within an organization, and which is a good thing, but it also brings about different levels of capability and ability with new technologies. So yeah, I think the sooner the HR teams are able to participate in that strategic technological shift, the quicker they can support the organization and the people in there to participate in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Nico. Any responses from the team here? How soon are you involved in the processes, and how quickly do you upskill yourself before you can upskill other people? If I can throw
to add to that, I think I'll take that one. When you are a salesperson, you typically are very good at selling L&D, because I come at a heavy background of it, but you find it quite tricky yourself to be abreast with the type of product that you're selling, because it's ever evolving. I think when we're sitting as human capital, being at the forefront, because I always say that we're the bridge. There's the people aspect of things, but there's also how do we make sure that the business is playing to win within the complex markets that we serve. And as Nico said, I've also looked at it to say we typically at the end mark, whenever the strategies that are being defined, etc., and we forget that business is made by people. Whether we're going to our customers, our clients, or servicing a new product, people are in the architecture of everything. So why is it that we typically have a reactive approach as being proactive to say who are the key role players in these decisions and who are we solving a problem for? Whether it's penetrating a new market, whether it's innovating, cross-selling, HR should be at the forefront in those discussions. And I think as we're evolving, the leaders are starting to see that HR is playing a very strategic enabler, because we are the ones that attract, develop, and retain the talent, and people are literally the sweet spot of any business. And if we can master some of these nuances and the challenges, we will also be able to co-create strategies that speak to bottom line, that speak to retention, that speak to innovation and being agile enough. But it becomes in vain, to be honest, when we look at the stakeholders that need to drive that outcome without having the relevant people in the room co-creating that solution. So I think most of the time we just need to be intentional as well, because we're quite good at building values, building strategies, and forget the most important essence, humans, in everything. So I think for me, as much as this digital acceleration is coming to par, we're seeing a lot of demand now with human skills. How do you empathize? How do you actively listen? How do you negotiate? How can you connect, build that rapport so that I can take my hard-earned money and say, yeah, Karen, let's do business together. And I think with a whole lot of noises happening with digital acceleration and AI and people kind of going on a fragment to say, oh my goodness, the bots are here to take our jobs, we forget that no one can code the human skills aspect of things. So I think I'll leave it at that and open it up to my fellow panels to actually probably add on to some of.
Belela, you say such a true thing. I think it is intentional. It's the human touch. And I see, Farad, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's a great point brought up by Belela. I think if you look at, it starts with the culture as well, right? On our side, we've got a few things we've done. I mean, we 2 years into a 5-year turnaround, we've got a mountain to climb. So culture is a big focus for our CEO from the time he landed at SLC. And it boils down to simple things, because everyone's got slides and, purpose. And, I've been in multiple organizations, global organizations in the past, and you have a Spirit Day once a year, or you have something that you do twice a year, and you do Mandela Day. But it's simple things. And one of the perfect examples our CEO uses is like, he could be on the way to meet the president of the country and he falls ill, or he needs to go home. He needs to go home. If someone's on leave because they're sick, don't send them an email that says, I just need one report from you to close us off. The person's sick. So, it's those basic things. The other piece is around accessibility. And I think it came up earlier as well. Also, what we've done is actually provided access to the internet. That's the core fundamental that's required, whether you have a device or a smart device. Before you can get to Google or Microsoft Azure or anything in that app for that matter, you need access. So we provide access to all of the staff members and allow them to be able to experiment and at their own time and leisure, and it's unrestricted. I think that's the other thing. You can't. The days I remember, 4, 5, maybe 8 years ago, I was in an organization that gave you some internet for work-related data and then nothing for your personal. You need to open it up. This is it's about inclusivity. The third piece that I find that's coming up and that's assisting me personally, funny enough, using technology to fight back. And what I mean is, I receive on a good day about 200, probably about 150 emails, and a lot of it contracts. And listen, where do you find the time? It means, potentially spending 2 or 3 hours of family time in the evening getting to stuff you couldn't get to during the day, and that's not fair on the family. And so what I've been embracing is, and this is what the IT team internally and outside has made available to us, is like Copilot. I'm not sure how many people have started using Copilot on 365. Yes. Summarize documents, summarize agreements, give you the salient points. So that's really been assisting me to, with my work-life balance, because that's the next challenge, right? You get all the tech. You've got 2 SIMs on your phone. You've got a dual SIM device, work profile, business, private profile. You've got notifications coming through, and you find yourself responding to emails at 9 o'clock at night. And so it's hard to find that break, that cutover point where you're now focused on the social part of your life, and you need to spend quality time with family. So that's just my way of equalizing things. But I think making the internet accessible is a big part of allowing team members to be able to experiment, try new technologies at their own leisure, because it's not something you can force onto people in terms of the digital upskilling.
I think that's such a wonderful thing to do, Farhad, because there's so many of our people who don't have no access, and it cuts them out of quite a lot in terms of being able to get a job these days. Just being part of what's happening socially. I think if you've got access to internet or the tools, it's so much easier to switch your mindset around how do you move forward in business as well. I really like that comment from your side and what you're doing, practices there. I also, Kiana, saw you nodding your head when Gulewa and Farhad was speaking. And you also spoke about a very complex environment in your introduction. I'd like you to also say how you're experiencing it at CCI and some of the strategies that you are implementing to really build that culture and the inclusive workforce from your side. Yeah, no?
Thanks, sorry. Thanks, Corin. I think definitely from our side, it's, we focus on micro learning. So it's more about getting, and then it really starts from talent attraction. So from the talent attraction piece, who it is that we are trying to get, what's fit for purpose in terms of, our business and where we at, and how we can best equip ourselves for what's to come. So it is a challenge, and I think again there's a lot of gaps that we face from talent acquisition, just the ever-changing complexities in terms of the roles. You update your role profiles and think you're good to go, and then there would be a different client requirement that would come in and kind of throw a curveball. So it's really about staying abreast, ahead of the curve, and keeping things agile enough, and being flexible enough to stay ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Kiona. Yeah, staying ahead of the curve is a key question here. Farhad, I also liked your comment around allowing yourself some space and fighting tech with tech. A fantastic comment there. And I want to move to Nico as an independent consultant and working with different cultures from different organizations. What were some of the key strategies that you have seen work within those organizations to really attract talent, to keep talent, and to upskill talent and build that culture?
I think recently I worked on a project where there was an attempt to really try and integrate the talent management or employee life cycle, let's say, like Kiana said, from attraction all the way through all the different people practices that people will participate in. So your performance management, development, career mobility, career growth through promotion, etc., etc. How do we integrate all of that? How do we make sure? Kiana mentioned job profiles as well. It's something that continuously changes, but it is quite a foundational piece of information in an organization. And I know there's a big move towards being skills-focused organizations, but we still need to know what the work is that people will be doing, and to keep up to speed with that in an ever-changing world now, which just seems to be changing quicker and quicker. How do we make sure that as HR we understand what that work is that people will be doing, and then how do we make sure that all the different people practices bolt onto that same source of truth, and that we don't make use of different sources of information? Somebody is hired to do X, but they're being developed to do Y, and then their performance managed on Z, for example. So how do we make sure that the life cycle that people go through and that they participate in is that they have a kind of consistent, continuous experience based on something that continuously changes? I think that's quite a challenge in itself. And what we found is that AI is very useful in that regard, is the ability to continuously take the work that people are doing, make it available as almost as a record for performance discussions, for regular check-ins with their managers, for development purposes, to help identify development gaps that they might be seeing, who's potential candidates that's ready for succession or for promotion. So it was actually one of the technical people, a senior developer in a previous organization. He according to him, in a couple of days, he put together a series of AI agents that would look at all the work that a person has done, look at the competencies required in his job profile, and give a kind of a rating as to how well this person is performing against each of the competencies, where are the development areas, etc. And that gives, not that I would, especially at the moment, I wouldn't just take AI's word for what it is. It always needs to be sense checked, but it gives you a very good indication of where somebody is at in their career, what they need to develop, and I think it enhances the conversation between the manager and their people as well. So, I think integrating your talent management practices, making sure we all refer to the same source of truth, being the work that people do and the skills required to do that work. I think that is an important objective, almost, that I would say that HR needs to embark on, and then involve AI as much as possible throughout that life cycle to extract the data, and that we can use data to have meaningful conversations, because there is a wealth of information that people generate in their day-to-day work. So how do we get a kind of a holistic view of the output that people generate on a day-to-day basis and use that in these different conversations?
Thank you, Nico. I think once again, it just amazes me how we're all talking about the speed of change, and how do you really move very quickly in catching up and not staying behind. And I would like to to hear from you, coming from a big organization like Reliance, and you were saying you use the tools that you develop. Tell us a little bit about your strategies, how to deal with that speed of change, and how do you manage the workforce through that upskilling process? There we go.
So I think many of my colleagues here on the panel today have already touched on this. A lot of scenarios, right? That we're coming from different verticals in our offerings. We face really the same challenges because, again, where we are, the landscape within, I would say, just Africa generally is quite similar. For us, for example, in South Africa, if you compare it to what's happening maybe in Namibia, Botswana, or something of the sort, you can tell the huge disparities between the skills, the knowledge, the adoption of these technologies. And so whenever it comes to even attracting these talents, you have to be strategic about the way you put up what exactly you're requiring. So one of the key things internally, we have to align what we offer to what our customers need, right? So we don't really look at our markets based off of what we are offering, but based off of what is the value that we can bring to our customers. So we basically build our teams looking at that, what we can offer, looking at the speed of how this technology is changing, obviously, and what we can do to ensure that we are up to date with our knowledge, our expertise, and the delivery. One key thing that customers are always concerned about is the quality of service, right? So that quality could be affected by obviously the lack of skills that the team may have, issues of awareness as well, just understanding the technologies behind what we are trying to drive, to deliver the value to the customer side. So many a times when it comes to the way of attracting talent, our HR is actually very involved. I think I found it very interesting when I was hearing some of my colleagues here. We take an approach where HR itself is actually a driver of this technology. So one of the tools, we don't build all the tools we use, obviously. And I had Copilot earlier. One of the tools we leverage heavily is Microsoft Viva. Microsoft Viva has like Viva Insights, Viva Engage, so on and so forth, right? And one of the favorite tools personally that I love is Viva Insights, right? This is a tool that gives you an overview of your productivity, your well-being, how you actually collaborate with your teams. And this is why I say HR takes the lead, because we have an inside look into how our people are performing, right? Where we can also be informed to say, do we need more resources? If we need more resources, what kind of resources are we looking at? It's not only about, of course, the project delivery side, just ensuring that nobody's getting burned out, things like that. And this is also what helps us informing the types of skills, the kind of talent we're looking for. And of course, we live in a continent which has some of the youngest people. So that's the talent really out there. The pool is mostly full of them. And for you to be able to attract them, you need to ensure that you provide ideal learning opportunities, clear strategies in terms of their growth path as well, and just generally being able to invest in them, despite the fact that, as one of the panelists said earlier, that they may be stolen. I mean, it's going to happen. It has happened so many times to us, but you must be willing to do that. It's an investment. And so, that's how we tailor the way that we are recruiting, our recruitment strategies. And of course, once you also put out the recruitment as well, it's about the experience of onboarding, right? So we automate those aspects. We have various tools or technologies that we utilize to ensure that they have a smooth transition. You don't come in and wonder, oh, what am I doing here? Who's doing what? How do I ensure my KPIs and OKRs are met? So yeah, there's just a lot of support we get from technology, but internally we really care about the people, and so we just need to ensure that everything aligns with them and their growth, and their well-being generally. So I hope that if any of my colleagues also have contribution, but this is how we have been moving, and HR is a key element in this success as well. Thank you, Karen.
I like the way you have the emphasis still on people, but the tech side is very key there, and you use a lot of tools to really assess where people are and what they are doing. Farhad, I would like to use to comment as well, also coming from a fairly big business. What are some of the strategies you've implemented really to build that culture, but also how to do your workforce planning and how do you run your training sessions to make sure, or whatever skills you use to upskill people, what are some of the strategies you've employed in your environment?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. And I thought Randy had his hand up there because I think he was going to respond to people stealing his team members after he's invested quite a while.
And I'll pass on to Bradley after you.
That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think with regards to upskilling, I think one of the challenges that I'm finding is that we've got our industry is quite fast paced. I mean, we work closely with the handset manufacturers, like Bradley mentioned. There's quite a few of them in the country. Devices changing 2 or 3 times a year. It's like a production line of tech coming through. Then you've got internal digital transformation ambitions. You've got industry knowledge, commercial knowledge that needs to be carried through, and then you've got the new workforce joining that is a bit more tech savvy. And so it's blending that and ensuring that, and we ground it in the culture. I mean, we've done some stuff like at certain levels, we've got an unlimited leave policy that we're piloting, or we started piloting a while back. I think one of the first in South Africa, which seems to be working well. And I think, to the point around HR being, having a seat at the table in all decisions, it's something that's grounded firmly here because that's the voice of reason. In anything we do is built around that. And I think that value proposition, providing the inclusivity in terms of accessibility to the tech, to the platforms, and the number of things that we need is a key part of how we're going forward. And it's also allowing us to blend and understand, where we are in terms of our, commercial journey as an entity. I mentioned that we are 2 years into a 5-year turnaround. It's our history is well noted by, I suppose everyone in South Africa that knows the Orange brand. But we've had certain challenges as an entity over the last 25 years of our existence. And I think one of the things that we managed to do successfully in the last year to year and a half is actually, use by putting the technology and understanding how it enables our customers and what it does for customers in terms of connecting people, changing lives, and the like. It's almost made our employees and our team members brand ambassadors. If we look at the studies, it's through the roof. If we look at our best, we looked at our brand corporate reputation surveys and that type of thing, top right in terms of the employees. And I think that's the culture coming through, and that's investing and putting your humans at the center of whatever you do, because they drive it, they drive the change, they drive the uptake. And we're finding that is now spilling over into different parts of the business where it's commercially it's driven by word of mouth, and based on our journey, it's a big part of how we show up and how we go forward, and the decisions we make as well in terms of being a good corporate citizen. I think adds to it, because you could talk about the tech, but I think the human being front and center and being able to blend the tech with the human interaction and getting that mix right is super important. I think if you get too much on the one hand and not enough on the other hand, I think it could make it seem like AI is taking over. The other piece that we're finding is that it's also about, with that blend, it's about providing context and assurances that tech is augmenting the capacity and capability. It's not replacing. I think we had a view just now from Nico on using AI to run through and be able to summarize a whole lot of work and things like that. That's the cool part, is getting some sort of discussion points, but then still having the human discussion in terms of the external factors that can't be factored into that in terms of the KPIs and the performance discussions that happen regularly and that type of thing. So yeah, I think those are the points that we consider. Yeah.
So once again, it boils down to people and how tech supports them, and not creating that fear around tech. Because very practical ways of how you tackled it, but how do you overbridge that fear of actually enabling that practical ways of implementing tech and using it, and people can understand it? Because I think for a lot of people, it's still AI is still something they don't understand. So I love what's coming forward using Vivo and Copilot and whatnot. Bradley, you were dying to say something around coaching of people. How have you managed that process, and also what role did tech play in that?
Yeah, so I think the one thing I wanted to sort of add on to what Nico said is, people will be quick to jumping into AI, and I think before the advent of AI becoming mainstream, you could jump onto Google and search a question and get 1,000 responses, whereas now people will jump into a ChatGPT or a Google Gemini, type in a simple question, and take that one answer that you get as that is the truth. And it makes some people, I think, in some aspects, lazy, because they think, well, that's the one answer, that's what they go, and you don't pursue it. You don't pursue it much further, which does pose risk, because there's constantly warnings about the fact that from the actual brands themselves, whether it's OpenAI or Google, to say there can be discrepancies and information can be wrong. So we thoroughly need to delve in and utilize AI, but proceed with caution, I think, is a big sentiment that we need to keep top of mind. Another thing of when Tutu was chatting now, and my comment of people getting taken, and I don't want to misquote, but it's the whole concept.
Like the movie I've listened to.
It's the concept of if you train them and they leave, but what if you don't train them and they don't leave? So you have to train. It's inevitable. And I think the one thing that ties into some of the strategies that we deploy here at Oppo is we don't just try to train on the products, but we try to give our team a vast knowledge of AI, machine learning. They've got to have an understanding of data analytics. Cybersecurity also becomes very prevalent, because this device that we carry around with us every day contains our life. And anybody that says security is not important on their device, I dare them to give me their unlocked phone and see how quickly that will happen. So we constantly have to find the gaps in the skills, and as rapidly as possibly close those gaps, to make sure that we're constantly fostering a culture of learning with the company. Because I think the resounding comment here is people first, and we have a big culture of that as well. Because without our team on the ground, you can have a billboard, you can have a TV advert, but then when a customer lands in store, they deal with a variety of different people who can very easily switch them from one brand to another. So yeah, that was a little bit of insight I wanted to just add in there.
Thank you, Bradley. I know, Paul, you've been dying and your hand's been up, so please take the floor.
Excellent, thank you. And I think it's very interesting the way that we're linking this into people. One of the things that I personally constantly heard in conversations that I've had with my peers, when AI started rearing its head, it was like, right, we're being replaced. That was the ethos of all the consensus that was going around. And what we've actually found, which is a real positive, as we've started engaging with AI, we've actually seen an increase in retention and an increase in engagement as well, specifically within the new hire space. So if we look at our attrition rates pre and our attrition rates post, we're much better than we were. And that's because I firmly believe that is because of the generation that's coming through. The younger generation, they're extremely intrigued by this new world. Yeah, and a lot of partners that we work with are introducing their own specific chatbots, if you like. So, for example, Partner X is now making the job easier for the agent that's coming through, because they will type in what the customer's query is, and it will direct them to the answer. So as you can imagine, the input in that is increased engagement, reduced attrition, but also a big increase in the KPI metrics, such as your first call resolution, etc. So this involvement that we're going through now, and it's just the start, we're already starting to see some really exciting things. So like we've been saying, what is next? What's going to happen? But I think the key thing is, it's not here to replace. It's here to support, and it's here to improve.
And that's the positive message, and I'm not sure everyone understands that yet in a lot of organizations, is how do I switch to become that person who can use the AI, the chat box, make it easy for me to understand. Fiona, I want to come back to you. We've now spoken about retaining people and attracting people. What are some of the practical techniques and strategies you've used to get the people you want into the organization, but also to retain and attract from your perspective?
Thanks, Karen. Just to Bradley's point, I saw an interesting picture the other day, and it said, what if we train our people and upskill our people and they leave? And the response to that is, what if we don't and they stay? So I think as leaders, that's where the focus of really upskilling and embracing the change comes in from a digital perspective. To answer your question in terms of how we attract the right people and get them to stay, I think we're fortunate at CCI in terms of our EVP and our brand and how that carries weight in terms of the decision making. So I almost want to say, without sounding too biased, but we do have it's an easy sell from a talent perspective. It's an easy sell. However, I think it really is painting a picture in terms of the potential. So what we're hiring now, we need to be strategic in that the skill set we're looking for is not what's going to service our current needs, but also our future needs in the next 2 years. I know there was some talk on 6G and what's coming, and I know that a lot of the companies are taking that direction and steer forward. So it's not about thinking short term and instant gratification of finding the skill sets that we need currently, but looking forward to what we could potentially need, and it's twofold. It's hybrid. It's getting our current workforce ready to excel, as well as our future pipelines ready to come in and kind of hit the ground running.
And I want to throw it open for the panel as well. Talking about attracting talent and also keeping your talent, I want to bring up the issue around diversity and inclusion within the workplace. What are some of the strategies you use to, first of all, get the right people in, as diverse as possible, but also how does it reflect in managing a team with tech and diversity as building a new culture within large organizations? And I'm going to throw it open to the panel.
Thanks, Karen. I'll jump in there. Specifically, if we're focusing on the second part of it, of retaining what we already have. And I think it's about, there's two key areas that if you look at company-wide survey scores, ESS scores as we would call them, and the information that's coming in, the two key areas that come up 9 times out of 10 is financial or development. Yeah, those seem to be the two key drivers that are keeping people engaged. So it links clearly into that. If we are focused on having clear career paths and reskilling, upskilling, micro sessions with our internal workforce, internal job visibility, talent visibility from within, as opposed from obviously just coming all the way from outside, and mobilizing the culture. So we're in a position where the guys know, okay, change is here. We've got a very, very clear plan, with a plan that has been communicated accurately by the leaders, because as we were saying at the start, it starts there. Yeah, and then just following that engagement through to keeping the people with us, keeping them excited, and supporting them with that internal organic growth within the business. So I think just to that point, I wanted to add on to that. Thank you.
Right. I want to come back to the question around culture and not just purely culture and diversity, but what to throw it open to our Cell C company and Reliance. How do you think around diversity and inclusion when you attract client and when you build your EVP? Because EVP seems to come out quite clearly in keeping people at organizations. We've mentioned it quite a few times. Farhad, feedback from your side. How did you build that culture? Is it a culture of diversity? How do you retain that diversity and what it mean for your organization?
So Nico's got a hand, but I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously embrace the culture, the diversity, and the culture based on our landscape in South Africa. I think as we go forward, we look at programs that we've got in place to manage this and ensure we are inclusive. I think there's a lot of programs that we run, leadership development, and a number of different items that drive this for us across all levels. And I think another big thing for us is, people buy from people, and I think it's a key thing that I come from the sales function that what we find is that when people I can't be selling something to you in the tech space, especially if I haven't used it and I'm not comfortable myself. And we find that going forward, allowing our team members to be more tech savvy in that space assists, but also around some of the solutions we deploy for customers have multiple layers of technology. What I mean is, like, to deliver a cloud solution, you need connectivity, is potentially some AI in there, there's some voice, there's some data, there's SLA, and all of these pieces that come together. And if you look at the traditional tech roles of the past, you've got one person that's a voice engineer, you've got another person that's a solution architect, you've got a project manager, you've got a service delivery manager, you've got about 10 people that need to deliver a customer solution. What we're finding as we go forward, customers want simplicity, and they want to be able to deal with the multi-skilled individual upfront that can scope what they require and give them, the SLA and the costing in a non-technical format, and then manage it from that point onwards. I think in the past, getting 15 people on a call to resolve a customer issue when a site or a link goes down used to be the norm. But I think customers are now, reaching a point where, especially in our environment, where we're looking at, one first call resolution and having conversations that anyone can pick up the non-technical chat and be able to escalate and resolve an issue as quickly as possible. And that's assisting with customer satisfaction. And we're doing this across the business at all levels. And it's working for us.
And I think that adds another complexity to it from a customer perspective. You certainly don't want to be jumping around to different people for solutions, but it adds a complexity which probably, I see Tutu smiling, is where AI can also play its role in providing the answers to the solutions for your customers. But it seems like the customer experience and the employee experience are very closely linked. Nico, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks, Karen. So I think it's been mentioned before by some of the other panel members that one of the things when it comes to retention of people is you obviously need to give them access to development initiatives. You must give them access to the online training and so forth. You must also give people access to be able to play with all the new toys that's available. That's kind of a given almost. I think one of the things that is very important that organizations need to make a point of is to give people the ability and the opportunity to apply what they've learned in a safe kind of environment. There's a lot of talk about psychological safety, and I think that is something that cannot be emphasized enough in an organization. You want people to try new things, fail, and almost like tell us about the failure, because because from that failure we can learn, and other people can learn from it as well. And then I think another strategy that kind of goes hand in hand with that is giving people the ability to move around within the organization. At the previous organization I worked at, they had Workday, and Workday had like a skills marketplace called Workday Gigs, and it gave people the opportunity to make opportunities available to other people in the organization where they can come and apply their skills within their team. So you might have a senior developer that needs to, as part of their key performance areas, would be to mentor others. So, and this person's, for example, working on a project where they need to do some design work on a feature. And then there's a more junior developer that's looking for an opportunity to do that. And these two people can be linked to each other or made aware of each other through something like an AI, ML-driven marketplace that can say, here's an opportunity, here's people with the right skills, let's put them together. And then kind of both of them benefit from that interaction and engagement. And it creates that environment where people can apply new skills that they've learned, and it's in a fairly safe environment. It's with somebody mentoring them, and like I say, then it needs to go with a culture of paying forward, being able to learn from our mistakes, and to kind of be encouraged to do so.
That's really a very different culture of openness, of inclusivity, of giving opportunities. Bradley, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think it's so important what Nico said, is giving people in the organization the opportunities to venture further than their current role. And then, of course, the safety to share ideas, take risks, moderate risks, where I say risks, and try new things. Pairing up a junior and a senior, and it's a mentorship role to the junior person, but every now and then you get some really valuable insight that the junior can actually enlighten the senior, from a new perspective, whether it's age or just different cultural backgrounds. So it's very important, and I think it's something that we try to we leverage our team quite nicely with that. I think also the openness within the organization. There's a phrase I saw the other day. It's about create like a child, refine like a scientist. Because I very often promote to my team when we have group sessions where we're trying to come up with new ideas. And I say to them, guys, come with your big, crazy, wild ideas. It doesn't have to make sense, but very often you throw something wild and unimaginable out there, and another person in the room grabs that thread, and it creates something truly magical. So it really comes down to giving people the opportunity to, as you said, a safe place to experiment with their ideas, and even if they fail. We've had a lot of breakthroughs from failures where it guides the business's decisions from fault to victory. So it's very important, and tying in the AI element. I think something that I use fairly often is the likes of Google Gemini's live function, where if like this morning I was driving, didn't feel like listening to a podcast, so I just started talking to the AI and bouncing ideas off of a person that's not there in the car with me. And it's something that allows you to be resourceful when you're busy doing other things, because that's one thing I say to my team. You're allowed to say you don't know, but that's not where it ends. It's always about finding the information, and at least that's the culture that we can grow within our organization.
Yeah, and it's super amazing how quickly you can get feedback from a Gemini or Copilot, or as long as we don't say thank you afterwards.
I will say please and thank you, because I don't know what's happening down the line. Just in case. Being safe.
Tuta, I saw you have got your hand up, and I saw you nodding your head with some of the comments. Please give us your perspective as well.
Yes, I think what Bradley and Nico are saying is, spot on. And I really love what Nico is saying when it comes to creating a safe environment for our employees, right? I think that's very key. But I just wanted to add on to say, with everything they've said, which I resonate with, from a Reliance standpoint, because of the global presence, you have, of course, different cultures, different backgrounds, and so on. And it's very tricky, right? I get to lead, people who are in different time zones, And sometimes even, what I think I'm saying, what I think I'm communicating is not obviously being received in the manner that ideally I would think, right? So you really have to be on your toes in terms of ensuring that you are bringing everybody along. The other thing that we've realized as well is the ethic. The work ethic is obviously as different. You'll find that in our case, I would say that in West Africa, they are more aggressive. They are always, ready to engage, ready to do whatever is necessary beyond. But I'm not saying it's a problem, right? I just think that, from our region, this side of Southern Africa, I have a different sense of the way that they want to work, right? So you have to be able to bring everybody along. And the key three things here is just showing them of the possibilities that are there, right? Encouraging them to be able to question the norms, propose new ideas, even if they're failing, being able to also bring the innovations, and just understanding that every role really matters. Just not only the role, but the person behind the role as well, right? And then the second thing being accountability. So we should be able to measure success based on the outcomes, but also on the behaviors as well. So we should be able to trust our staff with the results that they're producing, and not just the tasks that they're checking off every single day. And lastly, of course, which is very important to me, is giving them that sense of belonging, right? Employees need to know that from the get-go, they are actually integrated in a community or an organization that really cares or values them, and it's not just about the role that they play. So we have to ensure that we embed those values into the way that we carry out the other processes, whether it's onboarding, the way we mentor them, and just the day-to-day activities in which we engage with them, right? So those are the three key pillars, I would say, in our case at Reliance. We try to ensure that we stick to just help bring everybody along.
And diversity across a global organization is even tougher than in one country on its own. I want to switch a little bit of the gears. And seeing that we've got about 15 minutes left, let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity and with all the technology that's happening here and the ethics, as you've mentioned, Tutu, as well. And how are your organizations integrating cybersecurity awareness into your employee training? How do you tackle this? Because there's also a deeper, darker side, I suppose, to the AI and the technology that we use. So let me hear from the panel, some feedback from the bigger organizations versus maybe the more smaller organizations. How do you tackle that whole ethical side, the cyber security side, the awareness and how to act as an employee within this environment? And Tutu,
if I may, Karen.
Yes, I'm going to throw it open with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, let me just pounce on that quickly. And I think I saw a question in the chat there that also kind of speaks towards addressing the ethical and data privacy concerns, right? So we have talked a lot about AI technology and so on, and I think that's a very key element. When it comes to cybersecurity or just security, privacy, we need to make sure that we understand from, of course, the company standpoint, the employees, our customers, all the partners we work with, everybody needs to understand. And the key threats when it comes to cybersecurity are always mainly from the internal standpoint, right? So if we don't bring everybody along in terms of the training, the adoption and understanding of the risks that are there, especially if, the bigger the organization, I would like to say, the more you are more susceptible to various attacks, just because, people just they like a challenge, right? So they know for sure that there's a lot of work going on in terms of securing our assets, securing their data and so on. And so they just want to try and see what we have in place. So what we do internally is that we have cybersecurity awareness sessions. This is something that happens on a quarterly basis, but beyond that, also through the internal employee engagement platforms, we always put out information regarding how they can secure themselves, as employees, securing that data. We do have also tools that can help us with simulations, right? Maybe things to do with phishing attacks, how to be able to understand that an email is legitimate versus it not being legitimate, and just having that sense of being safe in the cyber world. We have had examples really that are drastic as well, where people would impersonate, especially on the HR side, people can, or finance, those are like the two key areas or functions that are always kind of, top of mind to attackers. So they will impersonate them, they will do certain things, give instructions for some funds to be moved around and things like that. And people really, because they see an email, they see that, oh, this is the CFO, whatever it is, they just don't think about it. They just, trust that this is just normal, right? So we should be able to train our people. But additionally, I think one of the biggest gaps we have is just that how fast, like, we are really connected. I think Bradley earlier just showed that, if anybody brings out their phone and it's not locked, there's just a lot we can do, right? So we are kind of, I'll say desensitized, because you have an iPad, you have an iPhone, you have a laptop, you have this. We are connected everywhere. Even our TVs are smart TVs. We have Ring cameras, right? So in a way, as much as these things are meant to work for our benefit, but they also really expose us. And it's important that we build a culture of understanding that we should use them, but we should use them wisely, right? Ensure you put the right measures and you're always alert to what's possible. So it's something we don't only do it internally, but we also do it for our customers as well. We have a free program. It's called Mediva, and it's a program where we allow anyone really within an IT organization to just register if they want to learn certain IT skills, certain knowledges, to be able to kind of ensure that they're able to run their organizations better, right? More equipped and more skilled. So we partner with some of our OEMs to deliver some of these trainings or sessions. So yeah, let me allow my colleagues on the panel to add their thoughts as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tutu. Let's hear from the other panel members. Bulelwa, from your side, your organization, how are they working with the ethical side? And as Tutu said, there's always a darker side to, I think, any new thing, but especially technology can also create a lot of difficulty.
True. I think for us, it's embedded right at the core. Typically, whenever you're onboarding someone, it's mandatory. I think we use it in everything that we do. We've got champions as well in each and every function that constantly are collaborating with our compliance and risk department to just look at some of the red flags pertaining to, especially I think in HR, some of the sensitive data that sits there around people. But looking at just us being in the payments environment, you can imagine money moving around in every split second. We have to be on par when it comes to the security of our clients, of our people, because that is really sensitive data. And I think the Tutu really summed up a lot of things. I think phishing, some of those things that we just affecting as the knowledge that has been transferred around the self-directed learning, some of the workshops, the learning circles that we have, has it been really embedded based on the test simulations that we do. But ultimately, I think that is our core, wired in our DNA around the payments architecture of how our firm operates, especially when it comes to the financial aspect. And I think there is that component where I think we tend to zoom into the training part, which is the 10% of learning. And I think as we are evolving now with this digital acceleration, we are saying, take that 10%, self-directed. And I think that's how technology is helping our people to say, learn on the go. You don't need to depend on Bulelwa to say, can I be trained in ABC? We're giving you all of these platforms. But I think the true challenge now, I think Nico had said it, and Farad was much more on how do we create that inclusive environment, bringing in that experimental childlike curiosity once again, because I think with technology, there is that can of worms and this imaginative arena where people can say, wow, how can I play around with these tools? How can I innovate? How can we actually also sense check what are our competitors doing with it? A tip of a button as opposed to back in the days where you're like, oh my goodness, did you see people next door? They're doing A, B, C, D, and bringing that inclusive aspect. And I think leaders as well, not to deviate, have a really, really huge responsibility because it's double edging to say we have to meet revenue, but at the same time, the people need to be the therapist, I need to be the coach, I need to do reverse mentorship because the youngsters are coming in challenging the so-called dinosaurs. So how do our leaders also play that strategic lever to balance some of these nuances that we're going under? But ultimately, I think that's the sweet spot of humans, constantly evolving, constantly curious, looking at the next thing, and I think that's what makes us self-transcend beyond the generations, is that we build these legacies and making sure that sustainability is at the core, because sooner or later, our kids will be sitting in these platforms, probably talking a different language, as opposed to us kind of having much more of the mixed aspect of the traditional and the technological era. But it's fascinating to see the future of work unfolding and us co-creating the sustainability aspect to bring it to life.
Absolutely. And you say very true things, and I think that curiosity, and you also alluded to it, is being curious not just about the good side, the bad side as well. Is that in asking the right questions, and as you said, doing those programs that allow people to question and ask and think about things. Interested from your side as well, Farad, in terms of the cybersecurity side and the ethical behaviors, and how do you inculcate it in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a concern. I mean, we've also got some history in that space, so we've had a lot of learnings. I think if you dig deep into it, the tech is there for cybersecurity. You can get endpoint protection, you can have VPNs, you can do a whole lot of cool stuff with tech, but it starts with the human again, right? Most of the breaches happen through a phishing attempt, and so someone clicks on an email. A perfect example. Increased letters that are sent out from a domain that looks similar to the company domain, boom, and then people are in. We are seeing in South Africa that there's been an increase in targeting of cyber crime syndicates. We've seen over the last 6 months a number of entities, and some of them global entities that are based in South Africa as well, that have been targeted. So it's a real concern. I think it's about obviously the upskilling component that provides some sort of insight into how these things happen, and how we need to pause for a second when you get an email that says increased letter or free device or free something before you share it. But I also think and outside of that, it's also important to focus on how we embrace the security component, not just for what you do at work, but even in your personal life. Social media is a perfect example. I mean, you put something on social media, it's there forever, and I think those are lessons that hopefully it's not a hard lesson for some who are making the wrong decision of something to post online. But we've seen a lot of that come through in the last few years, and it's gaining momentum in South Africa, and it's leading to multiple different things. I think from a cybersecurity perspective, we've got quite a robust internal focus on it, and we're managing a lot of customer data in South Africa. We have Papaya, and for companies in Europe, you've got GDPR considerations, so obviously that adds to it. But based on what Pulewa said earlier as well, it comes down to the human and how we interact with each other, and the level of trust and ethics and scruples and morals and everything that you built into it. Technology is an enabler. It's not there to replace anyone. And I think that's the key thing that has to be driven across the business. And the leadership has to, buy into that and drive us accordingly across the business. Because it's not just, I think when the internet really got going. We were talking about this last night. When 3G was launched in South Africa, it was a big thing. And
yes, I remember that.
Yeah, early 2000s, and before that you had dial-up, and there was no real internet on your phone. And it evolved very quickly. I mean, you went to touchscreen phones, no buttons. You're like, how the hell am I going to get away from my BlackBerry and BBM? And some people on the screen and some of my panel members don't know what I'm talking about. So it gives away their age, but it's evolved quickly, right? And as the evolution happens, it's about how you take the people on the journey, but you need to have guardrails. And I think that's what we do well in our business, because it also comes down to policies and procedures. I think Blair touched on this a bit, that if you look at your business as in our industry, like adults or young adults, mature adults, probably a boomer type of thing. The policies and procedures were set, in most cases 20, 30 years ago. Now you've got a new generation coming through. You've got a whole lot of tech coming through. You've got cybersecurity, AI considerations, ethical considerations. How do you make that? How do you take the policies, keep the guardrails in place so that people can still be inquisitive, but not be penalized for coloring outside the line? Because as Bradley mentioned, sometimes doing that brings you a new product, a new service, allows you to discover something new. So you want to keep that going in the digital environment, but make sure that the policies are not restrictive, where people feel like there's a fear culture, and if I color outside the line, I'm going to have the hawks outside my door.
And then you stifle innovation, as you said,
correct,
as well. We are slowly running out of time. So I want to, first of all, just some of the key themes that came through for me is that whole weave of how customer relates to employee, how the customer brand is influenced by the employee brand and the employee value proposition that you have in your organizations, that it's a very complex environment, and that there's a young generation joining that's maybe at a different space than your older institutional wisdom that resides in the organization. So it's a whole culture mix of what people do, and then you put the technology beside it and inside it and on top of it and underneath it. And how do you really make sure that all of that gel together? And I think it places a big onus on leadership and how leadership leads that journey to allow that innovation to happen, but also, as you said, Farah, to put the guardrails in place. It's not an easy journey for leadership and also for your HR people who are really driving the people component of this. So I think we've had very insightful contributions today. So I want to thank our panel. Really, from the bottom of my heart, it's been an enjoyable discussion, and I hope for our participants and who has joined us on this conversation, feel free to connect, to start talking about the journey and to share experiences as we have done today, because that learning from one another is very key as well. So I want to thank each one of you, from to Bradley, to Paul, Kiona, Bulewa, Nika, and Farhad. Thank you for being part of the panel, for joining us here today. And I'm going to close off the session, and I hope we can take those thoughts with us for the rest of the day and really make some, let it influence our decision making and our strategies, and start thinking new about certain aspects of people management in this tech environment. Thank you to all of you. Have an enjoyable day. To all our participants, thank you for joining Regenesis with us this journey, and look out for the next webinar from our side. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant afternoon. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.